All right, so we are here tonight to learn a little bit more about honing your humorous speech in anticipation of the upcoming humorous speech contest and in general for love of being funny, right? Everybody loves funny. And speaking of funny, Tina LeBlanc, who we were just talking about, is actually officially T2, but really T1 in my heart because she is funny and lovely. A former district leader, currently serving as the District 55 administrative officer. No? Finance officer. Oh my goodness. Well, thank goodness I know what I'm talking about. anyways, all of those things. She's a great leader and an all-around funny gal. It's going to be hosting a panel of folks, and I believe we're going to have some interaction and conversation around honing your speech, honing the humor in your speech. Welcome, Tina LeBlanc.
Thanks, Jean. So I want, first of all, everybody know that this is going to be a very conversational thing. We're just all going to kind of chill out, have fun. It's not going to be presentations. I'm going to ask people questions. They're going to answer it. We're going to have a conversation. So really low stress. Welcome to Honing Your Humorous Speech panel discussion. So you may know that Bart Lozier was meant to be your moderator today, but he had to go on an emergency vacation to Greece. Yeah, I know, it's tragic. I'm keeping him in my prayers. But anyway, y'all got me instead. As Jean said, my name is Tina LeBlanc, and I've been a Toastmaster for 5 years. I am not a DTM, though. Most people think I am, at least most people in district leadership. Maybe that's how I got my job, not sure. But I am not a DTM. I am in several clubs. My home club is Laughing Matters.
We're Laughing Really Matters!
Thank you, Amy. And I personally think I'm hilarious, but not everyone appreciates my sense of humor. For instance, I don't know, when I was growing up, my teachers didn't appreciate it. And now my employers, now that I'm an adult, my employers don't necessarily appreciate my sense of humor. So I want to get us started with introducing my panel of experts. First, we have Luisa Montalvo. Luisa, you want to give everyone a wave? She was born and raised in South Texas, and she later moved to Austin, Texas, where she worked at Abbott Laboratories for 25 years. Then she retired at the very, very young age of 53. I'm 53 now, and has been busily rescuing homeless dogs and cats and driving them to New York over the past 3 years. If you will check out Luisa's little square right now, you will see that she is in her car because she is indeed driving, doing a dog rescue, but she's going to North or South Dakota. Which one is it, Luisa? She's going to one of the Dakotas. She has fostered and cared for over 850 homeless dogs. She first joined Toastmasters in 1989 for 3 years in her early days at Abbott. Then she rejoined in 2013 and has been a member ever since. Our second panelist is DTM Tim Manson. He's been in Toastmaster for 26 years. In that time, he's competed in every type of speech contest that Toastmasters has, with varying degrees of success, about 32 degrees of success. And some of those contests based on the audience reactions, his words, not mine. In the humorous speech contest arena, he won all the way back to regional conference level with one particular speech back about 1 million years ago when Toastmasters actually had regional conferences, and the contest went that far. A bit more recently, he lost at the district humorous speech contest to none other than fellow panelist Luisa Montalvo particular speech. One of Tim's biggest tips that about humorous speech contests is don't compete against Luisa Montalvo. Tim is here tonight to discuss this and other ideas about how to write winning humorous speeches. Our third panelist is Amy Samet. Amy's been a Toastmaster since 1998. That's 23 years. She's the one and only charter member of Laughing Matters Toastmasters.
We're Laughing Really Matters!
Established in 2006, who is still in the club. She was the winner of the District 55 International Speech Contest in 2007 and in 2009, and she won the District 55 Evaluation Contest in 2015. In 2007, Amy was a semifinalist in the Funniest Person in Austin contest, and that same year she was the preliminary semifinalist in the Nickelodeon Channel's Funniest Mom in America. And yet Amy has never won the District 55 humorous speech contest, and she's not at all bitter about that. Not at all, Luisa. Not at all. Our fourth panelist, Theo Bill. He's been in Toastmasters for close to 3 years, and he was last year's district evaluation contest runner-up. He joined Toastmasters to better hone his storytelling skills. He's a past president of Austin Toastmasters, which is the greatest club in the known universe. I know, but don't ask him about the multiverse, though. He's never actually gone head-to-head with Luisa, but he suspects that he would not have a chance. Now, I thought I would kind of get us warmed up a little bit by going through a little icebreaker table topic just to get people kind of loose. So, first question for my panelist. If animals could talk, which one would be the rudest? Amy Samet, if animals could talk, which one would be the rudest?
I'm going to say a chicken. Chickens always seem to have a tone about them where they're squawking and complaining, and it's never pleasant to listen to them. They've just got to get in your face, and they don't understand taking your turn in a conversation. They don't understand manners. They don't understand decorum. They're just chickens. They're just squawk.
Thank you, Amy. I think that's a very good answer. My next question is, which would you prefer to have as your roommate? A goat or a bird? Tim Manson, which would you prefer to have as a roommate? A goat or a bird?
Golly, oh gee, I thought you were going to do the same question about that Amy had.
You're a good Toastmaster. If you need to pivot and go back and answer that question, you
A
just do.
goat or a bird? Gosh. Well, as long as this is not a contest with Luisa competing, I'll be okay here. I would say between those two, I would love to have a chimpanzee. If you combine those two, you can possibly, well, no, that's for another different type of Nickelodeon program. But you can talk to a chimp. You can do sign language with a chimp. You can't do that with a bird or a goat. Now, my dad had a goat when I was a kid. I'm kind of having not an affinity with goats. I tried to ride this goat that had horns. He promptly threw me over his head and both horns scraped down my chest. So I don't particularly care for goats. So yeah, a chimpanzee is the animal to have because birds like peacocks just always shout for meow, meow. All the time. We had peacocks too as a kid. So yeah, I'll do a chimp any day.
There you have it. Word straight from Tim. You have to have a chimp as a roommate as opposed to a goat or a bird because he's kind of had both and he knows the scoop. Next question is, what sport would be the funniest to add a mandatory amount of alcohol to? Theo, what sport would be the funniest to have a mandatory amount of alcohol added to it?
I think the sport that would benefit the most from livening up might be golf. Because you're out there. There he is by the tee. He's lining it up. It's so calm and quiet. It's almost like you can go to sleep. Instead of getting a party, having fun, telling lots of jokes with everybody that you love, and making it just a raucous, fun, good time. I think golf would probably benefit the most from some alcohol. Now, I don't know about the shots getting any better. I know mine would, but I don't know about yours.
Definitely. I would have to agree with that. And I do know because my partner Brian, he will go out into the golf course. He has been known to stash a beer or two into his golf bag. So I think it's already kind of happening. Great.
I thought it was mandatory. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Manson's right. And finally, Louisa, the question I have for you is what superhero or villain you can choose do you think would make the best therapist? And you can choose from either the DC or the Marvel universe. So, what superhero or villain do you think would make the best therapist?
Thank you so much for that question. I think because I do not know any DC or any superheroes. Oh, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna go with, and call me biased. I'm gonna go with Wonder Woman. Now, I'll tell you why. Men, and I hate to say this, don't listen. What did I just say, guys? You have no idea because you weren't listening. However, a woman will talk and talk and talk and will not allow you to actually tell her what your problem is. So by the time you're actually leaving, talking to Wonder Woman, or rather listening to Wonder Woman, you have cured yourself because you don't want to go back through that again. So yes, I believe Wonder Woman would be the best therapist ever. Thank you.
Nice. I like it. And I might agree with that. I think so too. Well done. Okay, and now that I think we're a little kind of loose, I'm gonna go over. I asked each one of the panelists to send me 3 of their favorite tips about incorporating humor into speeches, and I thought we'd go over those tips. Now, rather than make the panelists sit and talk to you for 5 to 7 minutes about their tips, I thought I would just ask them questions about their tips, and I thought that would be fun. After that, then we're gonna have a question answer session. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and stick them in the chat and we'll get to those questions after the tip section. And then finally, we'll wrap up this evening with if you brought a speech idea or content idea or a snippet of a speech, we can workshop it here and try to make it as funny as it can be, or at least give you ideas. So we're gonna start with Amy. So the first thing for Amy is, one of the tips that Amy sent me was think of a speech as a conversation that includes the listener. So inclusion is everything. Amy, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, actually, this is a quote from Jerry Seinfeld. He said that a stand-up is a conversation. Even though he's the only one on the stage speaking, the audience is reacting. That's their part of the conversation. He tells a joke, they laugh. And he acknowledges their response by giving them time to laugh and by being happy about it. And then when he goes on, he's looking for the smiles, the nods, the laughter. So it is a two-way street. Him saying a joke and them responding. Now, you don't want to step on your audience's laughs. That's very important because that's their part of the conversation. Like, I'm sharing something, you're responding by saying, hey, I understood that. I get it. You're funny. That's what the laughter says. So you want to give your audience their turn and don't step on your laughs. Let them respond. Another reason you don't want to step on your laughs is because you will ruin the setup of your next joke and the audience won't hear it. But it is a back and forth. And be aware when you're in front of a group that you're there to be interacting with them and receiving their response. That's where your energy comes from. And that's how you can continue the momentum.
Fantastic, Amy. That's great. I really like that. That's something that I am particularly bad at. I plow through speeches. I'll make a joke and I'll just keep plowing. I'm like a horse trying to go to its little its stall, and funny laugh so I do need to slow down and let people have time to laugh. So, next, Tim, you said begin with the end in mind. So what's up with that?
Well, everyone has to know where their end is. I mean, that's the only way we can sit down. But one of the big things about motivational presentations is to begin with the end in mind. What do you want the audience to think, to feel, to do, etc.? Humorous speeches are no different. What do you want the audience to do? Well, yeah, you want them to laugh, but you want them to experience that story. And as is written in the rule books. We don't do one-liners, we do funny stories. And so something in your story will not only make them laugh, but it should make them feel something. Maybe humor, maybe motivation, maybe, oh, I don't want to do that again, or I can relate. That's especially good in a humorous speech if you got a topic that everyone can relate to. For example, and Luisa remembers this speech, I hope, I have a speech about the GPS, because that's the one she beat me with, or that I came in second with against Luisa. But everyone has GPSs, and everyone has problems with them. And at that time, a GPS would always say recalculating. And so in the humorous speech, everyone can relate to that vicious voice saying recalculating. So what is it that you want your audience not only to laugh about, but to feel or experience or to do afterwards or not do afterwards? Maybe you've given an example of something that you've done that they shouldn't really want to do, or maybe they do and they shouldn't. So that's what I mean by begin with the end in mind. Once you have the end, the beginning is a piece of cake and the middle is a piece of cake. You can then write the path that you want your audience to go down to in order to get to that destination. So begin with your end in mind.
Tim, I think that's a fantastic tip. It reminds me that a speech is not stand up. So we're not, when we give a speech, we're not out there trying to do stand up necessarily. A lot of times we can make our speeches funny, but the speeches kind of still have a point to it. So great tip. I love it. One of the tips that Luisa sent to me was something that I actually do is take your most embarrassing moment that you would never ever share with anyone and then tell everybody about it. So Luisa, let's hear about that.
Thank you so much. I believe the one thing that really gets an audience involved in your speech is your vulnerability. So when you go and share something that you probably would never want anyone to know about, and if you're able to put a spin on it with humor, they're able to laugh and relate because they're realizing, oh my gosh, that probably is something that happened to me, but I never would tell anybody. I think one of the funniest speeches I've ever given, not in competition, was about my father's funeral. We had the casket. I was holding the front part of the casket, and my brother was across from me. My cousins were behind me, except my cousins are all 6'4". I'm 5'1". My brother's 5'5". So the casket looked like it was going to take a nosedive any minute into the ground. There was a slight rain that had happened the day before, so the ground was unlevel. Now, just to set it up, my brother, I mean, I have long hair, but my brother has longer hair, and he always wears it up in a cap. But for the funeral, my mother said, you can't wear a cap. Just wear your hair down. So he and I are taking the casket. Again, it looks like it's going to take a nosedive any minute right into the grave. We're not even going to need that little platform that it goes up and down on. And I'm walking and I twist my ankle, and the funeral director is telling us, keep coming, keep coming. When I twist my ankle, it almost looks like I'm going to lose control of the casket. So this is probably the most embarrassing thing for me because this is my father's casket. And I could hear him yelling at me, what's wrong with you? I'm inside this casket. So the funeral director looks at me and says, ma'am, are you okay? Do you need help? And I got upset because I don't want help from anybody. That's just the way I am. So I was upset and I looked at him and said, no, I don't need help. And my brother looks at him, flips his hair and says, aren't you going to ask me if I need help? And I'm like, it was so embarrassing, but this is my brother. He's the only one that can make me laugh in a terrible time. I'm laughing. My brother's laughing. We're both looking at my mom. I feel like I'm 5 years old again in church, all over, because she's looking at us like she's gonna kick our butt as soon as we leave the graveyard. And it was one of the most embarrassing things for me. But I tell the story, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, that story you told about your dad's funeral, hilarious." And not too many people can say, that funeral story you told, hilarious. So take your worst, most embarrassing moment and make it funny and put it out there, and I guarantee you'll get the laughs.
Fantastic. Again, absolutely agree. I was in my desk at work and we have cameras everywhere. I was reaching over to pick something up and my chair slipped out from under me. I tumbled to the ground. And at first, for about 15 seconds, I was really embarrassed. But then I went online, I got the videotape, I recorded it on my phone, and then I went around and showed everyone. Anything for a laugh. So thank you. Theo, you say that you think accents will help people be funny. Now, I am really, really bad at accents. So when do you add accents to your speeches or to your your speeches?
I like to use accents occasionally because it's like it's a momentary moment of lightness that you can just add in there, and just everybody goes and, what's he talking about? And especially, if it's a drunken Scottish man who's just waiting around you don't know where he's going. Or you're impersonating Shrek, one or the other. I don't know which that was, but it's nice to be able to take a moment and just kind of take the tension out of. It's really good at a transition in your speech to be able to utilize it as kind of like a pivot point. Maybe you've been talking about something that's really incredibly serious, and then you just need to take a little bit of the air out of the room and just have everybody, cut a laugh. And you can go, use an accent there, and it could be anything that you want. It could be an impersonation, like Michael does. I used to do years ago impersonations of Ross Perot. Nah. We've got a chart over here, and this chart over here, it's going to be telling us this is exactly where the debt and the budget's going to be. But it's something that you can cut the tension with in a speech.
That's fantastic. You had mentioned golf earlier, and now you're mentioning Scottish accents. I don't know if people have seen it, but I highly recommend to, after this, Google Robin Williams talking about the origins of golf. And that is one of the funniest things. I've watched it probably 10 times. Every time I watch it, I laugh so hard I can't breathe. So, and you're right, the accents, especially Scottish accents, make such a hilarious difference.
Aye, they do, lassie.
Exactly. Oh. Now, the next is a tip that I actually got from several different people. So we're going to talk to those people and see kind of if they're coming from the same place or different places. But Tim said humorous speech ideas come best from everyday life. And Amy said, talk about the stuff daily life. You'll be more comfortable and confidence is everything. So, Tim, tell us how we can mine our daily lives for funny stuff.
I'll think about it. What is it that you do, you are, you want on a daily basis? Did you trip today? Did you fall down? I've got MS. I fall down a lot, and I can laugh about that. I bounce. I didn't used to bounce, but I bounce now at my age. But I've got several speech titles. For example, regards from over 60. Well, I'm 65. So I can talk about all the things that we old people think you young people, Louisa, shouldn't be doing. Growing up without a cell phone, the GPS. I used to be a rodeo clown, so I've got a speech called The Rodeoer. Yep, he's mine. I got to keep him. That's about my son. So all these things, and the more you know, the better your speech is going to be. The easier it's going to be for you to remember your speech, to create your speech. Take something that happened, as Louisa just talked about, and blow it up and I mean really blow it up, exaggerate. Self-deprecating humor is the best humor in the world. So whatever happened to you that you didn't particularly care for, somebody else is going to laugh at, I'll guarantee you.
That's great. I absolutely agree. Um, so before I go into my little thing about that, so Amy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I find that when you're doing the most ordinary things that everybody does, that is where the gold mine for humor is. Like we all went through the snowpocalypse, that freeze earlier this year. It was this year. It seems like a million years ago. And as soon as it happened, really, as soon as anything happens, I'm thinking, how can I make a funny story out of this? Or how can I tell it to somebody in a way that is funny? So, it was really a very surreal experience. Life was very different for everyone. And I played a game called My Blank is Now My Blank. My winter coat is now my pajamas. My car is now my phone charger. My dog's daily routine of eating, napping, and looking out the window is now my daily routine of eating, napping, and looking out the window. And lastly, my entire house is now my refrigerator. So these were just little everyday things that everyone was experiencing at the same time. And the more you know your audience has those same elements that they can relate to, the more you know your humor is going to hit. Just everyday life. I know there's many dog people in this group, big time dog people. And doesn't it just amaze you every day how much we do for our dogs? I mean, I have just spent thousands of dollars redoing my backyard so that my dog won't get hurt in the backyard. So my dog won't escape. So my dog will be happy. It's crazy how much we love our dogs and how much we devote our hard-earned money to them. And what do? Nothing. They don't bring in $1.
It's true. Dogs are complete freeloaders. I'm not sure what to do about that.
Parasites.
Parasites, they are. Bless their hearts. Which that brings me to one of my actual favorite tips. And rather than me tell the tip, I am going to go and choose someone from the audience, a guest speaker, whether he's ready for it or not. In the audience is Mr. Rich Bassmer. He is the president of Laughing Matters.
Laughing really matters.
Right. And one of the tips that he gave us, because we have a comedy coach kind of aspect of our club, are these books. So, Rich, you want to tell us about these books that you passed out to everybody?
Absolutely, Tina. My mic is working, right?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. I have a new computer, new setup, new background. And so, yeah, one of the things I'm a firm believer in is to record funny things that you see. I've got a terrible memory. And so I'll see something that's funny. And if I don't write it down, it escapes. And who knows, at some point I could have used it in a speech. So the idea behind a book, and probably a lot of you have heard about it, or a notebook, is to just jot funny stuff down. You might not know what you're going to do with it, but if you see something funny, you write it down. I still chuckle to myself. It might be silly, but I see people smoking cigarettes and they have their hand hanging out the window so they don't have to smell the smoke. I just kind of think, the smoke probably bothers them, so they keep their hand out there. Not to mention that maybe they're trying to cut down on their smoking, because if they're driving along, that cigarette's going to burn faster if it's out in the breeze, right? But things like that, when you see something that's funny, jot it down in the book. I actually probably have got maybe 4 books. I've got one in the car, one in the desk, one upstairs, one downstairs. and I'm in the process of moving, and I just happened to look at these stacks of books, and I said, I really thought to myself, I really want to consolidate all that, because there's funny things that I'll see or observe, and I'll write it down. And then every now and then, if I'm in writing a speech or trying to put together a stand-up or something like that, I'll just flip through that book and see if anything jumps out at me that I can use. So if you haven't started a notebook of some fashion, and that's why I passed them out at the club, our Toastmaster club meeting one time, it's just to encourage people to jot down notes in there, anything you find funny, tips that you hear here on this workshop. I've already written down, Amy, I know I've heard it before, but I wrote it down, is that concept of my blank is now my blank. I think that's a great idea. You have some good examples, and that's something that I'll jot down in this book and make a note of it. And who knows, I'll work it into a speech at some point. So get a book, big book, little book, piece of paper, and start making notes.
Thank you, Rich.
Back to you,
completely
Tina.
agree. And what I recommend is when you make a note in your book, make sure you make enough of a note so you sort of remember what you were thinking at the time. For instance, I just looked in mine and it says helicopter pilot in Vietnam. I have no idea what I meant by that. I'm sure it was hilarious when I thought of it, and I thought that that was enough to write down to remember whatever the thing I was going to say. However, now I completely don't remember. But it's good to have a book, and I'm going to extend that to not just funny stories, any kind of stories. Anything that happens in your life, you think, oh, this could be a part of a speech. It doesn't have to be the whole speech. It doesn't have to be the overriding theme of the speech. It can just be a little tiny anecdote within the speech. But I think by jotting down those stories or things that you see or things that you think about, then it helps you not to have to remember. You have it all written down. You can go back and look at it. So fantastic. All great tips. Okay, so which leads me to my next tip. And Luisa, you already kind of talked about this a little bit, but never insult your audience. You must always degrade or insult yourself. People want to laugh at you, not with you. So
That's actually true. I grew up watching The Tonight Show with my dad. It was one of my favorite shows. And there was only been one comedian that I know that could insult the audience, and the audience wanted to be insulted, and that was Don Rickles. He was the master at insulting. He would insult the president. He would insult the Pope. He didn't care who. He would insult, and it was funny, and people laughed. The thing is that as soon as you insult your audience, I don't care how funny you are or how good a speaker you are, you have lost probably more than half of your audience. So if I get up there and I make something funny about what happened to me, I want my audience laughing at me. And I'm okay with that. And that's very hard to do. Again, going back to take your most embarrassing moment. It's very hard to get up there and share something that you would never want to share. But the thing is, you want the audience laughing at you, because they're going to be able to say, you know what, she was funny. What happened to her? What happened to her? What happened to her? Nobody wants to be insulted. Nobody wants to be shamed. So very important. Go ahead and attack yourself all you want. Never attack your audience. That's my philosophy. If one of these days, if I'm good enough to be Don Rickles, I'll try it, but not yet.
I couldn't agree more. Here's the scoop. I'm a super easy target. I can have so much more material to make fun of myself that it's going to take a lifetime for me to kind of work through all that. I have so much, and I will say anything for a joke. I will say anything about myself for a joke, and I'm 100% okay with that. Now, if I was given a serious speech, I've never given a serious speech, but if I gave a serious speech, then that might be something different. But if I'm trying to be funny, then I'm going to be funny, or I'm going to try to be funny. Fantastic. Okay, so next I'm going to pick on Theo. Theo, you talked about exaggeration. So let's hear about exaggeration.
Exaggeration is great when you want to make somebody's mind go and just take a moment and think about something. Like, for instance, I tell a speech where I had just broken up with my ex, and I was starting to drink too much, and I was really specific. I said in the speech, I would crack open a bottle of wine and I would sit on the couch for 7 hours watching Star Trek Next Generation. And I would get, and I went on and on. So I was, I didn't sit on the couch for 7 hours, but I was really specific and I exaggerated cracking open the entire bottle of wine. Likewise, I just gave a speech a couple of days ago talking about an old man and a young man. And the young man I exaggerated as 9 foot tall combination of Arnold Schwarzenegger meets Yoda. And it was this exaggeration moment that you can just say something completely outlandish, completely out of context of where you're at, that you can make it kind of funny. An ordinary thing you can blow up into something very, very humorous.
That's great. And that is a really common comedy technique, especially, is that exaggeration, and people are not expecting it. Especially when people are not expecting it.
Exactly.
Which brings me directly into another tip that a couple people came up with. And Theo, you were one, redirection. And
Yes.
Tim, you said takes the audience in a different direction than they expected. So I'm going to pick on Tim first. Tim, what did you mean by that?
You were going to do that. Take them in a different direction. You're going along, you're telling a story, and they expect something to happen, but that's not what's going to happen. Do something totally different. And I can't for the life of me think of an example off the top of my head. And that's an example. You thought I was going to tell you, and I can't tell you. Amy can, because she's laughing, but I can't. So you're telling your story, you're walking down the primrose path. The audience knows exactly where you're going in the next segment. And in the next segment, boom, you take them someplace else. And I heard a comedian talk about something, and he didn't get much of a laugh. And then he said, well, not funny now. And the room went crazy, because either it was going to be funny later on, but he made it funny even though they didn't think it was funny. Not funny now, but, and then fill in the blank. But take your audience down a different path than they expect, create expectations, and then crash them.
Absolutely. Theo, you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say also that was what Tim's first tip was about. Understand the end in mind too. So if, as we're telling a joke, we understand where we're going, where that punchline is, we don't want to give it away, but we know where we're heading, and we know that it's completely, in a different path from where we're leading them at the moment.
Absolutely. I don't know if you guys know Judy Carter, but I recommend Judy Carter. She wrote the Comedy Bible and also the Stand-Up Bible. She's very funny, and she helps kind of give you some formulas from some jokes. But I think one of the things that she said was, if people are expecting the joke, it's kind of funny, and they'll give you kind of a chuckle, or they'll give you a knowing glance. But if it's unexpected, they will laugh out loud. They will give you a guffaw. It's like, whoa! And that is what, at least me as a trying to be funny person, that's what I kind of thrive on. I expect, I'm bringing people this way and then try to rip them around. And that's what I strive for. So I absolutely agree. It's the misdirection. It's people think they're going one direction, and then just that whipping them around is what the laugh out loud is built on. Okay. And this is another one for Luisa. And this one I'm gonna agree with, and I'll tell you my little story afterwards. But she says costumes and props are always good to fall back on, but they shouldn't dominate the speech. They shouldn't overtake the speech. So Luisa, you want to talk about that?
Yes. A 2019 finals speech, I didn't realize how effective me getting up there and looking like a cowgirl, and then two minutes later looking like a thug. I didn't realize the audience was going to absolutely love it. And I could have done the speech without the hoodie, without the beanie, without a crowbar, without a hammer, without the rosary. But those little props, I believe, are what catapulted me into one of the top 3. They didn't overtake the speech, but if it's going to add so much more to the visual that the audience is going to be able to capture and resonate with, then by all means, use a prop. Again, don't let it overtake the speech. But if it's going to add that humor to the speech, I say use it. If, again, anybody can go out there without a prop, without a slideshow, without something, without music, without singing. But if it's going to make your audience laugh, by all means, use it. Absolutely.
So last week was the Master Speakers Comedy Showcase, and I did a speech on how to deal with teenagers. My partner has a couple 17-year-olds, and how to deal with them. And I used the props of a cocktail and a glass of wine, and so it was great. And I think it hit home. You can ask, Amy, and Tina, did you think it worked? Okay, so they're getting thumbs up. So I used it, just kind of like pick a good wine that goes with, whining. But then during the rest of the meeting, I went ahead and finished off my props, and that made it a little rough by the end of the meeting. I had like a double cocktail, and it was made for a good Saturday afternoon. So yeah, I agree. So the props are good. Just make sure that the speech is not the props themselves, that they add to the speech as opposed to become the speech. Amy, so you say look at the camera to connect. Connection is everything. I think this is a good, solid tip. So let's hear about it.
So much. I mean, we've all been on Zoom meetings this year, a lot more than ever in our whole life. And you'll notice that if no one's looking at you, you have an excuse to turn off your camera and go outside in your backyard while somebody is speaking. It's so easy to disconnect. But if you truly have the feeling that the person who's talking to you is right there with you and wanting to engage and directly connecting with you, you're going to stick around. You're going to feel like you can't go away. It's just like when you're having a conversation with somebody. I still refer to him as my teenage son, even though he's 32, but he doesn't look at me while I'm talking. Why should he? And back when I was in the Funniest Mom in America contest, there was another comedian in the show, and she said, I never dress sexy when I do comedy, because when I do, I feel like nobody's really listening. And I said, I got a teenage kid at home. I know nobody's listening. Seriously, eye contact is everything. It is your connection to your audience. And if that's the whole point of being a Toastmasters, is to connect with your audience, to make it important that you were there and they were there, and that you shared something together, and that your ideas made a direct connection from my heart to your heart, or from my soul to your soul, my sense of humor to your sense of humor. That's what it's all about, really. It's everything. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. And, I think it's a gift. Actually, it's a gift to the the people who are watching you. So, for instance, if I'm watching a speech and the speaker is speaking directly to the camera, then I don't feel like I need to look at the camera. I feel like I can then just look at the the speaker's square and concentrate on him or her. On the flip side of that, if the speaker is looking at the audience, so right now I'm looking at Amy and Luisa and Jean and Tim, so I'm not looking at the camera. So by being able to see, I know that that speaker's looking at the audience. So then as a participant or as an audience member, I feel like now I need to look at the camera so that when the speaker's looking at me, he or she feels like I'm really listening. And I am. I'm listening, and so I feel like that by the speaker taking on that burden, if you will, by looking at a little green dot instead of actually looking at people, then as an audience member, I can kind of kick back a little bit more and more further enjoy what the speaker is saying. I don't know if that makes sense.
It made enough sense.
But it's, consider it a gift to the audience. Consider it a gift as part of your speech. You're looking at the green dot and you're not looking at the actual little squares of the people, which Zoom, it's very difficult. It's all messed up. You can't get that snickering as you could if we were all in a room together. I could say something, I could read your body language, I could actually make eye contact with you. And that is great. But on Zoom, the eye contact with the camera is what you have to focus on. Okay, and our final tip of the evening, our final prepared tip is, Luisa, dare to go, I love this one so much, dare to go outside the boundaries. If you get a bad reaction from the audience, pretend to take a notepad and pencil out and say, don't use that next time. I she's doing it now. I love that. That is so funny. Luisa, do you want to tell us about that?
Absolutely. The key to comedy is not only knowing your audience, but being able to read your audience. I was giving a speech, oh gosh, about 4 or 5 years ago. And it was there in South Texas. So predominantly 90% of the audience was Hispanic. And I was making jokes about Hispanics. And they didn't like that. And I said, oh, wait, are most of you Caucasian with a tan? And they all started laughing. I said, oh, okay, all right, let me see. I can use that one next time. Audience okay with that. So if to me, if you crack a joke and you get no response, or you even get some kind of backlash, if you admit to the audience you made a mistake, I always act like I'm taking out a pad and pencil. Don't use that next time. Didn't work. Mom was right. Something like that. So where you admit, oh, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have used the joke. I tried it anyway. I was wrong. And as soon as you tell the audience, I was wrong. I was wrong. They're like, yeah, you were. So you've actually distracted them from the bad joke. Now they're applauding because you made a mistake. You admitted it. And it wasn't them making a mistake. And again, that goes kind of back to don't attack your audience. So going outside the realm, again, I was very worried 2019 competing because my first speech, and I think if I remember correctly, for 2019 on the international, one person, one speaker gave a very heart-wrenching story about having to say goodbye to her brother. Another speaker gave her story about her son dying and donating the organs. And I'm thinking, I'm going to give a speech about killing a bull in a bullfight. I have no chance in hell to win this contest. And by the miracle of everything, I did. But in that speech, I make fun of Hispanics getting drunk. And I have to actually stop, and I thought about, should I leave that in the speech? Then my final speech, again, I make fun of Hispanics getting drunk. And so I was waiting for somebody to come up after and say, you know what? You made fun of Hispanics getting drunk. That's not cool. And nobody said a thing, whether they were going to come at me and tell me, but you need to weigh, and this is again going outside the boundaries, because you can make fun of something. People probably are not going to laugh at somebody dying of AIDS. They're not going to laugh at somebody dying of COVID. So when you go outside the boundaries, you have to be very careful, very tactful. I do like to go outside the boundaries. However, if anything, I'm going to, again, attack myself when I do. So that's it.
Thank you, Louisa. And I think that really kind of emphasizes that it's all about taking chances. You can write what you think is a funny joke. Sitting at my desk here, I can write something down, and I might think it's funny in my head, but when you actually tell somebody, that's when the rubber hits the road. That's when you really kind of get an idea if it's funny or not. You can't really figure out what's hilarious in a vacuum. And so by being able to feel free to do that experimentation and to have something to fall back on, such as the notepad and pencils, like, oh, then I think that helps you as a writer feel like you're okay with taking chances, that you're not just going to be lost out there. You're going to be able to pull it back in. So that concludes the prepared tip portion. So now I thought we would kind of go over questions, and if anybody has questions for our panelists, if you have a question, we can go from there. I have a couple questions prepared.
I have a comment.
Amy Samet has her hand up.
Yes, I had my hand up. I was going to tell Luisa that sometimes that humor is just a happy accident, because everybody gets drunk. I've heard people respond to a speech about Jewish mothers as all your Jewish mother jokes were exactly the same as Italian mother jokes, which were exactly the same as Chinese mother jokes. They're just mother jokes, really, beneath everything. So any joke about Hispanics getting drunk is no different than a joke about Indians getting drunk, Jews getting drunk, Italians getting drunk, Irish people getting drunk. Everybody gets drunk.
Amy's drunk right now.
That's right.
Believe me, Irish people being drunk is different.
I said that.
Tim said that.
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
And Scottish people, you don't even know they're drunk because you can never fucking understand what they're saying.
Nice. Okay, so does anyone have any questions? Tina,
I have a question.
Well, hold on. We're going with Tina first because she raised her hand. Okay, Tina, what's your question?
I have a question, and this is for anybody. Theo brought up the subject, but I know there's no definitive answer here, so I'm just looking for opinions about this. I'm writing my humorous speech, and I have an accent. I want to do a very small bit with an accent. And one of the things I'm worried about is, in this climate of political correctness, I worry what people think sometimes about taking an ethnicity and making that accent of some ethnicity. What do people think? I personally don't have a problem with it, but
Can
I
you
don't
do
know.
that line right now
Yeah.
to show us?
Oh,
You can do it, Tina.
okay. So I'm doing a speech, and I want to
No question.
reference. I want to reference I say, my sweet little Korean neighbor says, "You'll see, Messi, you'll fix." Like, so I'm going to say something like that. But
That's so harmless. That's such a harmless line.
Yeah.
It depends what the person is saying, and if it is obvious from the context of your speech, whether you're saying it with love. And you obviously love your neighbor.
Yeah.
I've heard the speech. You obviously love your neighbor, and the
Okay.
bond is evident, and it's
Okay.
from the gut. People can tell whether you're doing it with love or with true venom, and I don't even think true venom is anywhere in your repertoire.
If you're using it to put somebody down, then that is where you draw the line. But if you're just simply imitating and making an impersonation of that person, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you guys very much.
Everyone has seen that person. Maybe
Yeah.
not Korean, but Hispanic, my
Okay.
own mother, Jewish. They
Okay.
all do similar things. Maybe not with a Korean accent, but
Okay.
I think it's totally relatable for everyone.
Okay. Thanks, you guys. Appreciate it.
Rick,
Can I go ahead and add something to that? One of the tips that I would suggest is to record yourself or record your speeches. I don't know about other people, but I'll get up and I'll do a speech and I'll have funny lines in there. And when I sit down, what did they laugh at? What did they giggle? What did I get a belly roll out of? What went on dead ears? So if you have the opportunity to do that speech and record it, if you're like me, I'll have to go back and I'll listen and I'll actually look at the written speech and I'll highlight, oh, this got a good laugh. This didn't get a laugh. I thought it did. And every audience is different. But I mean, you could use something like that. You could toss your accent in a couple and see if does it get a belly roar? Does it get a couple snickers? So a tip that I would encourage everybody to do is to record and listen to your speeches, especially if it's in a competition, you're going to do it again, because the better speeches are not written, they're rewritten, right? So think about recording your speeches.
You know, what's interesting is that at Master Speakers, Tina D'Souza did a teaching session. We have a training session at the beginning of each meeting on evaluations. And she brought up something that I never had even considered is record your evaluation. So when someone gives you an evaluation, record that evaluation so you can go back and listen, because when you hear the evaluation in real time, you might just focus on one little tiny part or two parts. Now in Master Speakers, we all get 6 evaluations for each speech. We get 6 evaluations for each speech. And so you get a lot of evaluations and you get good, or I hope get good at giving evaluations. She suggested writing it down and then going back and transcribing it out. So to make sure that you're getting the kudos when someone tells you something good, you don't just ignore that part. Because I don't know about y'all, but whenever I hear something, an evaluation of my speech, I ignore all the good stuff and I only focus on what I can improve on, and then I ignore the back end good stuff. I only focus on that poop in the middle where things that I could do better. But it's important to know the things that you really truly did well, so that gives you good feedback as well. And so I think that is great, Rich, about recording your speeches. It is uncomfortable for me. It is very uncomfortable for me to go back and watch the speeches I have given, because in my head, I don't know, it's uncomfortable, but it's huge. It's a great learning experience. Michael, what do you have?
Oh, I have a question for Amy, but let me add on to what Richard said. I did take the Judy Carter course during COVID, and it was with Dean Lewis. It was the same course. Paid $399 or whatever it was for 6 weeks. We had a showcase at the Dallas Improv afterwards and all that fun stuff. But yeah, the formulas, there are joke writing formulas out there, and then I did a follow-up course. I think LaCroix had Judy Carter on his podcast, and she offered a 10-lesson, this find the message within you course. The only thing I went through is I went straight to the humorous, but she had 10 more lessons on humor. One of them, somewhere in there, and somewhere in all that mix, the magic that comedians use is listening to that recording and grading your jokes 1 through 5. If you're only getting a 1 laugh, a 1 second laugh, 2, 3, a 4, a 5 is I just use a star for 5. That's an audience where they're clapping, and that joke's good. Keep your 3s and 5s and 1s and 2s. Maybe you can punch them up a little bit or do something. But that is the secret sauce, according to Dean Lewis, who teaches a lot of those Judy Carter classes. So I want to get back to Amy. Amy mentioned Chinese, Italians, Chinese, Jewish moms, all the same thing. Okay, I used to, one time I was asked to speak, and it was at an Italian restaurant, Chamber of Commerce or something. So I had an Italian joke. I think it was, and I'm just curious about those Chinese and Jewish moms, because This was why do Italian men marry women with mustaches? They want somebody that looks like their mom. Ah! Do Chinese and Jewish moms have mustaches too? I don't know, Amy.
Yes, the answer is yes. So do Cajun moms.
Forget about it. Forget about it.
That's right. Forget about it. Yes. So Amy, I don't know an actual question.
It's more that every mother is in a way sort of sadistic to their children, but it's out of love. They claim that it's out of love. It's just it's a crazy odd thing to be a mother, because you want the best for your kids, but at the same time, all you can do is nitpick and nag in the interest of making them their best. There's a lot of opposites in it that make it funny, but it's daily life. When my son first learned to drive, when he first turned 16, I had to go over the rules for car dates with him. I said, when you go to pick that girl up, you don't just honk your horn. You go to the door, you meet her father, you shake his hand, and you give him your cell phone number. And then you bring that girl back over to our house so I can tell her, I'm not going to raise your baby. That's what being a mom is all about.
Yep. Does anybody else have any other questions?
I have a question.
Okay, Brian.
First, I'd just like to say thank you for this panel. It's been phenomenal. All very good tips. My question, I suppose, goes back to Amy's very first tip, but anyone can weigh in, especially as it relates to the Toastmasters humor speech contest, where, at least in my experience, everyone is on mute and their cameras are off. How can we avoid stepping on our audience's laughs or interact with them in any sort of way under that environment?
I'd love to answer that one. When Zoom first started, and I would bring back a joke that I had told in person, maybe 100 times, I already knew how long people would laugh. It was already something I was hearing anyway. But I have been very unfortunate in that I don't know how any of my new stuff in the last couple of years has been going over. I have to be live with people to know whether a joke really works. That's so unfortunate. I wish there were a way that we could say to the audience beforehand, okay, if you know there's no construction going on in your front, right in front of your house, or your dog's about to bark, or you've got somebody vacuuming or talking in the background, please leave your mic on so the speaker can hear you laugh. And I think there's also a special setting where you're going to stay pinned, even if the laughs come in, because sometimes if someone in the audience laughs, their face is what you see on the screen. So it's still an evolving art form, but I do love that you brought that up, because where are you going to get the energy from if all you got is silence as a response? It's truly a challenge. And I suggest get out live, do your stuff live in front of your friends, and then just know what to expect in terms of the laugh, if that is helpful.
Yeah. Theo?
So one thing that I'll say, Brian, is go out and give your speech to as many clubs as you can, especially the ones that are online. There's so many that are available throughout the world that you can take advantage of. Many of them would be more than happy to have a guest speaker, and ask them to leave their cameras on so that you can gauge their reaction, that's the point of why you're not only practicing your speech, but you're wanting to see what their reaction is. So it explicitly ask them to introduce you with that, ask people to put their camera on. And then my second point is, and this is not to have a plug for my club, but yes, it is. We're back in person. Austin Toastmasters is. So, anybody that would like to come and see people in person and, be present and actually feel body heat, close in the room compared to a Zoom cold universe is definitely welcome to.
It's fantastic. And to add to that, laughter is contagious. So I know that if I'm sitting and I'm saying something and Amy laughs and I can hear Amy laugh, number one, it makes me feel more confident. It makes me feel a little bit more relaxed that my stuff's not just fitting flat. But then other people hear Amy laugh and laugh along with her. And so it's laughter's contagious. So that's why it's helpful to have the other people to have their sound on. I want to make sure that everybody knows, I'm sure everybody does, but everybody knows that the district from area up, all the speech contests are going to be online. Now, so, and that's what was voted on. At first it was voted to be in person, and then there was a bunch of difficulties. So now it's been voted and everything's going to be online. Now, your club, that could be any way you want. So your club, you can do your speech contest. It could be in person. It could be, everyone could be standing in the shower, however you want to do it. But from area up, it'll be online in a very sterile situation. One thing that we did want, and it was interesting, is that it was for the, was it for Tall Tales? No, I don't know. It was for one of the contests. We actually went over to Tina's house, T1's house, and she gave the speech. And so she had kind of a little built-in audience. There were probably 3 or 4 of us there. It was me, Amy, a couple other people. And so she was getting that real feedback. It was still online, but she was getting real feedback from us. And so one person had mentioned that, oh, it wasn't fair she had a laugh track. And I was like, it wasn't. It was real. That was my laughing at the time. And so maybe if you have some people come over during your speech, you'll be getting that kind of real feedback while you're giving your speech. Luisa, do you have anything to add to that? I saw you had turned your mic on then off.
The idea of actually being able to get on Zoom and telling people to leave their microphones on, I think that's brilliant, because that either that or being able to leave the cameras on, you're able to actually see what your audience is doing and whether they're engaged, whether they're laughing. So I would never have thought of that, but that's actually a really great idea. It makes it difficult when you're competing, because to me, and I think almost all the speakers here will agree with me, you get that energy from the audience. And it's so hard to be confident about what you're doing when there is no reaction, none. I remember giving a speech one time and everybody had their microphones off, and I was on my phone because of course I was driving. Uh-oh, hang on, time out. I'm in the witness protection program, so every now and then I've got to lay a little low. However,
do we need to call a jump start for you?
Yes, no, I got it. But the thing to do with that is, I didn't know people were laughing or not. So I said, I hope you guys are laughing, because I thought that was funny. And I backed up, then I waited 2 seconds, and then I went ahead and did my speech. And then when I knew there was something funny, I said, you're laughing, right? I know you're laughing, and back up again. So every time I thought something was funny, whether they were laughing or not, by the time I interacted with them to hope they were laughing, they were laughing. So, but again, visiting any club right now is key, because if you say, leave your mic on, leave your camera on, I want to see what's going on. Now, again, the funny thing is you're going to think something's funny, and sometimes nobody's going to laugh. And what you don't think is funny, people are going to laugh. So it has a lot to do with reading your audience and the timing, because timing is everything. Again, what Amy was talking about, stepping on the laughter, that's your audience's ability to react with you. So comedy is so very hard to do. It's a lot of the timing and reading your audience. But yes, I think being able to ask your audience to leave your microphones on and leave your cameras on Brilliant. I love it. I love it.
Also, I think that this kind of ties into what Rich said, is ask to record it as well, because I don't know about you, but I know that COVID has made me super, super lazy. And so I don't memorize my speeches anymore. I just make them really big. I try to stare at the camera while I'm reading my speech. So I can't see anybody. So if you're doing that, I can't see if if everyone has their little things turned off. Even if they're on, I can't see people laugh. But if it's recorded, then I can go back and see people laugh. It's like, okay, I didn't hear the laughter, but I can see that people laugh. So you can write it there. So that's just me being lazy. So I have one more question, but first I want to ask, did anyone bring any ideas or content that they want to workshop, or should we just kind of keep going in the vein that we're going? Tina?
I have another question, because Stephen and I were talking about the effect of doing a speech you've done before. Meaning, I have a speech that I did like 5 years ago, a humorous speech. And I'm like, do I do that speech that I did like 5 years ago, or do I do the one that I just wrote? There are pros and cons of each. But I specifically wanted to know what people's thoughts are on a speech that you maybe have seen before. Does that, in terms of humor, does that take away some of the humor? Or is it maybe sometimes it can be more interesting because you pick up more bits of the humor that you didn't the first time? So I'm interested in hearing the panelists' thoughts, or anybody's thoughts actually, about hearing a speech more than once, a humorous speech more than once.
Okay, I'm going to start with Tim. What do you think? Tim, you've been in the Toastmaster game a while.
Thanks for noticing. It depends on how long it's been since you've done the speech. I've done that. I've had speeches that I've done more than once. There was a speech called Enough. And one year I went to a district contest, and Jean asked me, are you going to do enough, or are you going to do the other one? So she remembered the speeches. But the other thing is, there's always somebody new in your audience that's never heard it. So, and again, laughter is contagious. If we're in person, those new people are going to laugh. And when the new people laugh, the old people are going to laugh whether they want to or not. And the old people might laugh anyway. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to remember your speech in total anyway. So, I wouldn't worry about that. A joke is a joke. If you tell a joke a year ago and it was funny then, chances are that same joke's going to be funny now. So I don't think people will anticipate. Sometimes they say, from the judge's point of view, if they've heard it before, that it's negative. But for me, I would do it. In fact, the humorous speech I'm going to do this time is what I've done before. So, and lost to Luisa too, by the way. Just saying.
Theo?
How many Friends episodes are there? How many times have they been rerun and rerun and rerun? Good humor is good humor. And people oftentimes, especially in Zoom, Zoom mentality, everything is included in this little tiny square. We don't remember a lot. So if it's been, as Tim said, if it's been a while, the likelihood is that even somebody with, a memory as good as Jean's may be able to remember that they heard it, but they don't remember the punchlines, or they don't remember everything about it. And it also gives you an opportunity. You're a different person. You've had different experiences between now and 5 years ago. Brush it up. You're a better speaker than you were 5 years ago. I'm sure the way that you're going to present it, what you're going to do, and how you're going to do it is going to be better than it was 5 years ago anyway. So I wouldn't let it stop you from utilizing something that is funny and making it even better now.
Never going to do the same speech the same way 2 different times in a row. No matter how long it's been, yesterday or today or last year, you're not going to do it the same, I guarantee you.
as Rich said, the best speeches are not written, they're rewritten. But I saw Luisa pointing at the camera. So, Luisa, did you have something to add?
Yes, I did. I think there's two important factors that we have to think about here. If you're giving a speech again, ask yourself why you're giving it again. If it didn't place the first time, it's like showing up with the same, I don't know, wedding gift the third time your sister gets married. I don't know. But if it was a speech and you thought, man, I should have won, which personally I think of all my speeches should have won. If you think this speech should have won, but that stupid Luisa was in the contest, I think if I make it better, that's the key. One, ask yourself, why are you giving this speech again? And two, if the answer is because I've made it better and funnier, then yes, proceed. If it's still the same speech you gave 5 years ago, if I've heard it, I'll probably laugh. I won't laugh like I laughed the first time. So if you're going to give the same speech again, tweak it to where it's funnier, better, either more slapstick, a little extra punch or something, because it needs to be better than the first time you gave it. And when he said, look, you're a better speaker now than you were 5 years ago, I don't know. I've seen some people stand Toastmasters and I'm like, when's this person going to get good? Me being one of them. So ask yourself, one, is the speech better? And two, why are you doing it? That's my 5 cents.
Yeah, Tina pointed out in the chat that the speech has never been to competition, but I agree. 5 years ago is a long time ago. First of all, girl, I'm not going to remember someone's speech from 5 years. I saw a speech Gene Ramsey did. I loved it. All I remember, it was about packaging stuff. It was about wrapping stuff. And she turned around and her hair was going crazy and she was wrapping stuff. It was hilarious. Now, do I remember the content? No. Do I remember any specific jokes? No. But I do remember, I love that speech and I would love to hear Gene give it again. So even if people kind of remember the speech, they are not going to remember the jokes unless they're not going to remember the jokes 5 years later. I mean, that's just reality. None of us here are that important that people are going to remember what we said 5 years ago.
And if they do remember word for word, that's their problem.
Yeah, that's going to be the exception, not the rule. But I absolutely agree with Luisa. Again, use every opportunity to make that speech better. And that's what Toastmaster teaches us. And I'm going to pull in a little Pathways Level 1 here. That's one of the things I like about Pathways Level 1. I know Blessed Pathways hard, but it's, you give a speech, you get feedback, and you give the speech again. I mean, that's fundamental. That as Toastmasters, they should have been teaching us that all along, for at least one time, that it's okay to give a speech again and again. That's okay. It's not, you don't have to give the speech just one time in your life and never give it again. That's incorrect. The more you give the speech, unless it's a boring speech or unless everyone's heard it. I'm not saying overdo it, but I'm in several clubs, lots of clubs to spread my speeches out amongst, get feedback from one club, make the speech better, and go give it at another club. Okay, we have 10 minutes, so we have, I guess, time for one last question, and then we'll start. Yes.
I have a question. I'm from China originally, so I think that gradually I noticed that, just like Luisa mentioned, sometimes there's a lot of cases. I also teach in a university. I know that sometimes I didn't expect the student will laugh, but now I know they usually laugh at certain type of themes. But sometimes the joke don't go well, but then if I don't intend to make a joke, they laugh. But so for Toastmasters, there's a couple of things that it's a little delicate as well. The cultural differences. Sometimes I thought it's going to be funny, but in this culture, probably the way to say it or the subtleness or nuance could be different. And also with the Zoom, with the not being in person, some people just don't find it as funny as I expect it to be, or sometimes could be this would be related to class teaching, would be like sometimes the sensitivity and like political correctness sometimes could go a little bit across the line without knowing because of the cultural differences. So in a sense, other than assess the audience, I really don't think of, like the other day, I tried to make a humorous speech. I talk about axe throwing, but anyway, I thought it's funny, but probably because of partly preparation and partly reading the script a little. So the words I thought is funny, but the evaluator didn't think that it's as funny. So I know some people find it funny, but the evaluator said something that was, I saw a little discouraging, basically saying he found nothing funny about, or at least basically that's what he's saying. I think I was like shocked to see something, hear something like that. So I think like, in a sense, I don't know like how to, one is the cultural differences that the humor may not get across. The other is it something that you can really develop? You know, if you are not necessarily a hilarious person, can you always become more funny through training? And how do you get across this kind of discouragement that people find nothing funny or joke or something? Yeah.
I see Amy's.
Yeah, Fiona, I've never seen you before. I've never met you before, but for the first few moments when you were speaking, I thought you're a very quiet, conscientious, serious person. And then the moment you said the words axe throwing, I thought that was hilarious just because of the contrast and the unexpected jarring difference between your quiet little self and a speech about axe throwing. So hone in on that. And hey, what one evaluator says is what one evaluator says. You do not have to take that to heart. That is a very funny idea. A small, shy person talking about axe throwing. Right there, that's gold.
Luisa?
This may be harsh, not for you, but for your audience. There was somebody cracking jokes and everybody was laughing. And I stood there and I thought, well, they're really not that funny. And they looked at me, they said, what do you think? And I said, well, I think you're not that funny. And they looked at me and said, who cares what you think? And everybody laughed. So if your manager, unless you're going to get fired, if he says, well, I don't think that's funny. Well, who cares what you think? Right away, you see, when you do humor, you have to put yourself out there and realize that you're either going to be hilarious, they're either going to love you, or they're going to hate you. And either way, it has no reflection on you. It's them. If they don't think something's funny, that's too bad for them. If you think it's funny, that's all that matters. Hey, I thought it was funny, and you can tell your audience that. If nobody laughs at what? Nobody, I thought that was funny. You don't think that was funny? And that's what it is. Don't worry so much about what anybody's going to tell you. And that again is pushing your boundaries. Because if you start to listen to what everybody tells you, you're going to stop giving speeches. You're going to stop going to Toastmasters. Go out there, be you, be funny, and don't care what anybody says or thinks. That's my 7 cents. A little more expensive this time.
I agree, Luisa. Theo?
I just wanted to piggyback on what Luisa was saying. Who cares if it's negative? If it doesn't help you, it doesn't matter. Just let it go. If they laugh, however, do take note of that. If you do get the reaction that you want, take note of that. And just as everybody's mentioned, I think Tina was mentioning about the recordings, looking back at what, your particular speech. Who cares what the evaluator said? If there was a recording of it and you heard laughter in the background, jot that down. Just because, he's a stick in the mud doesn't mean that your joke was bad. It just means he's a a boring piece of wood. So keep in mind that it doesn't have to do with anything that you're not being funny, but also keep track of what works. And the last thing that I'll say is, and there's so many much funnier people than I am on this, but I know sometimes what works for me. That's why I do accents. I know accents can be kind of funny for me. And so find something that you know that works with you, that you can always get some sort of a laugh with. And then you can rely on that if something, doesn't work. You can go back and you can say, okay, I need to pick it up at this point. So I'm going to throw in an accent somewhere and be a drunken Irishman somewhere. So it just depends.
And also, you know what? Comedy can be specific and it can be culturally specific. And we don't have to be all things to all people. One of the things, and with Toastmasters, the comedy speech only goes to the district level. So if you decide to participate in the speech contest, you're only going to district, and that's where it stops. There's not an international version of the comedy speech. So you don't have to worry about trying to please a bunch of different cultures or judges from different cultures like you might have to in an international speech. Comedy can be pretty specific, and that's okay. So just kind of think about it in terms of your audience. Think about it in terms of what you think's funny.
Yeah, thank you.
Going in just a little bit different direction, as my GPS usually makes me do. There's one thing about writing words and lines that you think are funny, and they probably are. But what's important is not so much what you write, but how you deliver it, how you speak, the inflections you use, the gestures you might have in that particular line. Do you move on the stage? All of those things go into a laugh, not just the words. And sometimes the words fall flat, just like this speaker I was talking about. He was telling a funny story, nobody laughed, and he said, "Not funny now," and everybody laughed. So words are important, but presentation is more important than the words you use. If I say the sky is blue, that's not funny. But I'll guarantee you I could do things and say that same line and you will laugh. I'm not going to do it now. Wouldn't be funny now, but see, you laughed. I was talking about the sky is blue. So it's all in presentation, voice inflection, stage use, gestures. All of those things make laughter, not just the words you use.
Yep.
There's also, look on YouTube, look for Asian comedians, see what they say, and more importantly, look and see how they say it, particularly the ones that have the stronger accents, and they're out there, and they're hilarious.
Margaret Cho is a good one to watch.
Yeah.
Margaret Cho.
I would encourage you to go to YouTube and just look for Asian comedians and see how they do their presentations.
Amy, who did you say?
Margaret Cho, CHO.
Oh, okay.
Check her out.
And Joe Wong is another one really good. I got to work with him once. And he's done the president dinner and stuff, crazy.
It is 8:30, and I'm sure Luisa wants to get back on the road, and I'm sure people are getting tired, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I want to thank my panelists. You guys have been fantastic, and actually Bart put it together, so let's hear it for Bart.
It's totally a pleasure.
Right. And so thank you, Tim. Thank you, Amy, Luisa, Theo. It's been fantastic. I want to give a big round of applause to Gene Ramsey, who was our wonderful Zoom host. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank everybody who came. We didn't get to hear from Jason or Reza or really Gene and Nunnally. I apologize that we didn't get to hear from you, but yeah, Jason's like, we'll talk later. We're going to dinner on Friday night. I'll talk to you then. So yeah. And so anyway, thank y'all. And I appreciate y'all coming. I appreciate all the fantastic tips from the panelists, everyone's openness, willing to share. I love Toastmasters.
Thank you, Tina. Fantastic session.
Can I throw a joke out to close?
Luisa, drive safe and get that dog up north.
Can I throw a half a joke out there to close this thing?
Go for it, Michael.
Goes back to Amy Samet that you talked about the snow apocalypse. I took notes. During the snow apocalypse, I made one real quick video and over to Theo impersonation. So I do Samuel Jackson, but I have to clean it up a little bit. During the snow apocalypse, I know I was out there. I'm tired of this monkey plum of snow on this monkey plum of snow day.
And sometimes you just laugh because.
And then it's something else that, like what Tim said, it's what you do. And they call it a lean in, but on Zoom, a lot live, a lean in is, but on Zoom, you gotta.
I thought it would be funny to be kind of walking, you're supposed to be on the screen, you kind of walk through and you're like, oh, hello. And you didn't know the audience would be there. You're just kind of walking. Anyway, yeah, it's a stretch. But I'm always thinking. It's not always good, but I'm always thinking about something.
When does this Master Speakers Club meet?
The Master Speakers meets twice a week. Not twice a week,
Twice a month.
Right? The first Monday.
First Monday and third Saturday.
Right.
And we would love to have you, any of you, come join us.
I was a member of Master Speakers in San Antonio, 5 or 7 years ago, and then they kind of disbanded. I think they turned into Top Notch now. But I like that name.
Jason's a member of, aren't you on part of TNT, Jason? Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone is free. Louisa, you have your hand up or you're saying goodbye?
Both.
Bye.
But that's yes. Somebody had mentioned that there's an Austin club that meets live now. What club is that, and when and where do they meet?
That's Austin Toastmasters, and we meet at the LCRA Redbud Center down near Mozart's Cafe. And we meet Tuesdays at 6:30. So I actually was not able to attend our meeting this evening, but it's every Tuesday, and I think the Tuesday before Christmas we're not going to meet, but other than that, it's every single Tuesday.
Thank you.
Lone Star Toastmasters meets every Tuesday in person, and so does Killeen Toastmasters every Friday.
Excellent. And Round Rock Chamber Masters meets every Tuesday at noon at the Round Rock Library.
Oh.
I'm going to let Jean know that she can stop the recording, and people can keep chatting if they want to, but
I'm going to go. Thanks, everybody. Enjoyed it.